The other day I was talking to this person who had moved into a product management role very recently. And over the course of the conversation, his key question to me was, I'm new to this role. I'm new to this organization. Do you have any tips, or, can you provide me with a framework that I could use when talking to senior stakeholders? So I told him about a framework. And before I explain that here, let me walk you through a small example and then kind of talk about how that framework could be applied here. So this example is again of a startup that I was talking to very recently, and they had been struggling to get their product initiatives to get to market in a timely fashion and to be able to get value from each of those initiatives. So very recently, they'd worked on an initiative where the accounts team had come to the product team and said, can you automate this supplier settlement, payment settlement process? And the product and technology team looked at it, and it looked like a fairly simple thing. They thought it would take about 1 week of effort. They did it. They were very happy with it. Accounts team was happy, and they rolled it out. But the suppliers, who were going to be the main beneficiaries, or one of the main beneficiaries from this, was not very happy with the way the thing was being handled anymore. And they said, you have to roll it back. And then the product and technology team started talking to the suppliers, and it turned out that to the enhancements required to address the supplier concerns would take an additional 4 weeks. And now they were in a fix, whether to invest that additional 4 weeks, or whether to write off the 1 week of investment that's already been made. And if they were to do the 4 week of additional effort, then it was going to put the rest of their roadmap for the month totally out of whack. An approach I have fine tuned over several years is as follows. You first of all, you start off by identifying your key stakeholders. The second is to kind of map them out on a 2 by 2 matrix of interest versus influence. You have low interest, high interest, low influence, high influence, and you map out the identified stakeholders in this matrix. Then you engage with them to get their perspective on the problem that's going to be solved and what sort of value it would deliver to various stakeholders. Once you do that, then you align all the various different perspectives and come up with the way forward. And you want to make sure that everybody is aligned on this way forward. And once you start making progress on it, you want to keep the stakeholders up to date on the progress. Now, let's see how this framework could have been applied in the context of the startup. Uh, the accounts team came to the product team and said, they wanted the supplier payment process to be automated. And from the accounts team perspective, it was simply a case of automating it so that the manual effort could be eliminated. And by doing that, they were saving time, and also they were, reducing the possibility of any manual, or rather, they were eliminating the possibility of any manual errors. Now, if you take a step back and look at who are all the other stakeholders in this equation, the obvious first one are the suppliers themselves, because they're the ones who are going to get paid. And at the very least, you want to make sure that the way you're going to pass off information to them once the payment has been done is in a way that is acceptable to them, and that they're able to work with that information. The second set of stakeholders would be your supplier management team. In this case, the supplier relationships were being managed directly by the CEO of the company. So you would ideally want to involve the CEO to get his perspective on things, because what you need to keep in mind is that when you're reducing the payment cycle, and you're effectively reducing the credit period, and if you're reducing the credit period, you could potentially renegotiate terms with your suppliers and get a better price from them. And if you're able to get a better price from them, you could potentially increase your margins. And obviously, that's something that the senior management or the leadership team would be very interested in, and they're likely to ask questions about how long it currently takes, and once this automation is done, how much the timeline was likely to reduce to, so that they could actually renegotiate with the suppliers. Now, given that you have suppliers and the supplier relationships coming in, you obviously want to talk to your supplier relations team first before you talk to suppliers, so that you can position this initiative as something that is going to lead towards renegotiation, and not the other way around. In addition to these two, you would also probably want to talk to your technology teams to make sure that any solution that you're proposing is technically feasible. I'll not go into too much detail about mapping these stakeholders on that matrix of influence versus interest in this video, because that's something that we will cover in a lot more detail in an upcoming video. The other key thing to keep in mind is that your different stakeholders would often have conflicting perspectives and conflicting opinions. So, for example, if you talk to your sales and marketing teams, they would probably talk about things like this is how this is going to solve world hunger, and if you sometimes talk to your support teams, it can be all doom and gloom. Now, the key challenge is to kind of hear those different perspectives, balance them out, and come out with a way forward that will actually work, and that will help you meet your business objectives. And once you arrive at that common way forward, you want to make sure that you align everyone, all your conflicting stakeholders around that proposed way forward. And of course, once you start implementing this solution, you also want to keep your stakeholders up to date, probably by giving them weekly or bi-weekly demos, so that they know what's coming, and if they see any concerns, they can give you a heads up sooner rather than later. The key thing to keep in mind here is that any rework is expensive, and any rework earlier in the game is cheaper than any rework later in the game. So you want to get constant feedback to make sure that you're on the right track. And if you're going off track, you want to find out about it sooner rather than later. If you like this video, do give it a like, and do follow me on LinkedIn, because I put out a new video every week, sharing some of my learnings and experiences from over 2 decades of working with product and technology teams. Thank you for watching.